my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious
It has begun!
Calm down, Doctor. Now is not the time for fear.
All you do is behave.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we talk the month's events in Geek for the month of April this time. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this. And joining me once again is the recovering Shadow Blazer, but thankfully, the shadows are kind to those who live within them, and they are helping with the healing process very well, are they not, Alex?
I guess they are, yes.
Well, I mean, the only other explanation that I have is that you bribed them, and then they helped heal you.
Maybe so.
You apparently know deeper secrets than Merrick Ishtar, because you actually got the shadows to heal instead of take away. So at that point, I have no problem saying this. You know, we're still a couple of months off from where we usually are with these podcasts just because of everything that happened. But just as a quick check-in, how are things going with you, Alex? Because I know that a few people are like, well, hopefully everything's going okay with your recovery.
Yes, I could say everything has been going very well with my recovery.
Mm-hmm.
My last doctor's appointment was back in May, middle of May. And all things are well because the fracture itself is fully healed. It's just taking time for the muscles to recover.
Yeah.
So I'm still kind of hobbling around. I'm trying not to limp because limping puts me a little more in pain.
Mm-hmm.
But the pain is tolerable. It's more like a dull ache, if anything. And I've gone back to work since. Started back a couple of weeks ago and been doing fine there too.
Are you still on like the hard painkillers or anything like that?
Oh no, I pretty much finished my whole regimen of medications.
Because I know I got a question or two about, wait, you said that this was Alex's first surgery. How was he on the pain meds? And I hate to say it, I don't know. Because when I talked to you, you were lucid. So, I mean, if you have any fun experiences, feel free to share them.
I don't think so. Not on pain meds, anyway. I don't think they ever really did much to me. Or, I mean, yeah, they helped with manage the pain, but I was never in a tremendous amount of pain afterward, except maybe just for a bit for the first night. But even then, after the first night in the hospital, I would have been heavily medicated anyway.
Yeah,
so,
my guess is they probably had you on muscle relaxers because you know, your muscles would be going crazy after surgery, especially since this is your first surgery. Maybe they have.
It's actually not. No, it's really not my first surgery.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, 20 some years ago, actually a little more than 20 now. Back in 2002, I was 13. I actually did have eye surgery on my left eye.
Oh, okay.
Because my left eye used to like kind of turn out. I noticed it happening like around that same time when I started 7th grade. My vision progressively got worse as I hit the 7th grade, and that's when I got glasses. And yeah, so I did have surgery back then. So this really wasn't my first surgery, but probably a little more major.
Not a huge shock to the system. Maybe a big shock just because of where they had to operate. But yeah, I'm guaranteeing muscle relaxers were probably one of them, and you probably had a prescription painkiller at least for that first week.
Yeah, I was on the oxy pills, and for a very short span. It was only like 10 days worth of meds for that. The muscle relaxant was a little bit longer, I think. I think the longest by far was just the low dose aspirin.
Okay, so yeah, because like for me, when I did my first knee surgery, we found out very early on that I did not have a good tolerance to pain meds. And so the first 4 to 5 days of my recovery from my first knee surgery, I can honestly tell you, I don't remember. I don't remember them at all. because they wanted me on a full, because at that point it was hydrocodone. They put me on the full hydrocodone, and it was way too much. And so it was so bad I was having like really bad nightmares.
Wow.
Yeah. And like I said, like the first 4 or 5 days I don't remember, but I remember just having like feelings of terror and absolute dread from them. And so my surgeon, he's like, well, this is new for this family. We'll cut them down to half, and even half wasn't enough, because I still was having issues. So for the longest time, like I'm up to about a half a pill now, but there was the longest time where I was on a quarter pill of prescription hydrocodone, and I would still have issues that if they still get brought up to your sister, she giggles, and she still won't tell me why. So there you go. But yeah, so I mean, you're probably on a lot of that stuff, but thankfully it didn't go horrible for you. In the meantime, though, have you been able to play or watch anything in the month where you've been kind of recovering and getting back into your regular everyday routine?
Oh yeah, was finishing up this round of seasonal anime, Sound Euphonium. The third season came to an end after, wow, can't believe it's been like 9 years since that show first began. It didn't run consecutively 9 years, but everything that's happened in between, including the fire at Kyoto animation, you can imagine it took a while for season 3 to come out, but it was a nice way to conclude it, I thought. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
I'm sure you weren't the only one who was diligently waiting because you knew the extra amount of time it was going to take.
Yeah, for sure.
So the company very much probably appreciated that.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that mine had, like, I'd been able to watch a whole lot, but I hadn't. I've been able to watch just little bits here and there. Usually if I'm watching anything, it's for other podcasts. So for example, I've been watching a lot of Beyblade, or as I keep on saying in the podcast, Blayblade, because for some reason I keep getting it backwards. So I watched a lot of that, but aside from that, the other thing has just been documentaries, and specifically like YouTube documentaries of like games retrospectives and stuff like that. So unfortunately for those who are waiting for, because the other thing I'm also working on is a solo review of Mobile Suit Gundam the 8th MS Team. And I know that some people are still waiting on it, but I literally wanted to get to a point where a majority of the episodes were done, and that way I could just start putting them out, and I could do it weekly, and then that'd give me enough time to finish it. Really, for me, what's been big is being able to play games, and I've been able to basically get into a kick where I love Stellar Blade, I love Neo. For those who don't know, like, when I used to do the Souls games in streams, the next game that was on my list was Neo, the game made by Team Ninja. And it's very helpful that both Neo and Stellar Blade run off of the exact same control scheme, so I'm not like throwing myself off. And I already know a few people are like, but Drac, what about Shadow of the Air Tree? No, because I'm not even that far in Elden Ring, so why would I literally slip both my wrists trying to do what I've been told are the hardest bosses that have been introduced in the game ever? So much so that I still get compilations in YouTube of people complaining about how hard those bosses are. Yeah, I'll pass until like legit strategies are made. Thanks. So that's really what I've been, and I've been on a really big Mega Man kick, which my kids have loved. So I've been playing a lot of Mega Man Battle Network and the Mega Man Zero series. And for the first time in a long time, I dug out the original Mega Man X, and I've been playing that. It's been forever since I've touched that series. What about you, Alex? Have you been able to play anything in that?
I did mention last stream I've been playing through the newer Neptunia game, so still been playing through that. I did play a couple of visual novels in the meantime.
I have seen that you played a lot of City Skylines.
Yeah, I just kind of...
For some reason, when I would come home at the end of the day and the kids are being put to bed and I'm working on editing or whatever, I'd always see that Steam tag come up. The Shadow Blazer playing City Skylines.
That's true. Last couple of weeks, I kind of got back in on a bit of a City Skyline kick to play that for a little while. It's always a game I like coming back to every so often and playing new cities, trying new developments, trying new challenges with every city.
What's funny is that I actually thought the AVGN inspired you, because the day that he released his SimCity video was the first day that I saw your tag coming up, playing City Skylines. I'm like, he must have watched the AVGN video, because I haven't yet.
It might have been that, yeah. That might have been why I felt the need to start playing it again, because of his SimCity review. So I probably just thought, now I'm in the mood to play City Skylines again.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well then let's go ahead and start putting April in the books here, Alex. And the first thing that we have to do is, Romney had his war, and I'm sure you will have something eventually. Aldo had his war. And we have a little bit of an update in regards to a new segment that I'm going to be calling Sweet Baby Nonsense. Because, well, the funniest thing about all of the Sweet Baby Nonsense is that all of the people involved are acting like babies. So, we might use either or of these, but the month of April, thankfully, a lot of the nonsense that actually happened was confined to the release of Stellar Blade. I shit you not, because everything basically came back to it, and the arguments that were being made about Stellar Blade. Now, we had covered Stellar Blade in earlier months, because the arguments for this have not been going on for a month. They actually had been going on for the better part of 6 months before this game had even come out, where a bunch of the same people the same games journalists that had problems with Stellar Blade, and then eventually it got involved into people who worked for Sweet Baby, people who worked for other narrative consultancy firms, would start coming out and criticizing it with the lamest criticisms that could ever be made, and also with some of them being very vocally proven wrong. The one I especially love, and I wish I still had the image for it, but unfortunately, it since has gotten taken down. So I wanted to share it with you, Alex, because you would just love it. But there was a reporter out in IGN France. Yes, IGN France exists. IGN bought a gaming journalist website in France, and it became IGN France. And one of the articles that people were rallying around against Stellar Blade was written by IGN France, where they literally basically said that the creator of Stellar Blade, because of how he designed the character Eve, Alex, had never, ever known or felt the touch of a woman, and was so sealed in their parents' basement that they probably didn't even know what a woman looked like. Do you know why this was funny in a weird way, Alex? Because all it took... What was that?
Yeah, because I read the article.
Yeah,
not this particular one, but the one you posted. Yeah.
Yes. Is that all it took was 2 Google searches for me to be able to disprove this, because all you had to do was find out what the guy's name was, which is Hyung Tae Kim. And then, immediately right after that, you would see an image of Hyung Tae Kim's wife, who, by the way, was an art lead on Stellar Blade. So, not only has he known the touch of a woman, but a woman, and a good-looking woman, might I add. I'll see if I can actually bring up an image of her so you can see her too. But a fairly good-looking woman worked on this game, and here's where the second search came involved. His wife is actually the one that recommended the woman that they utilized for the body capture for Eve.
Right, they use a Korean model.
Yeah, and it's a Korean model. And so at that point, all of that was disproven. And of course, you know, the internet was the internet about it. The detractors of Stellar Blade were like, went off in a huff. And the rest of the internet was just laughing at them because, you know, it was easily disproven over all of it. It got so bad that IGN France had to issue a formal apology to Hyung Tae Kim, to which I believe it was actually IGN themselves who basically came over to IGN France and says, yeah, you need to issue a full apology for that. And they were supposed to retract the statements that they had made in said article, but to my knowledge, that never happened. Instead, from what I understand, the article you can't even find anymore. Or the article in question where they did that. And so now all we have is kind of the references towards it. And I believe there is a Wayback Machine that has the article, but yeah. So really quick, just that first portion of it. What did you think about that? The fact they were like, oh, this guy's obviously a 40-year-old man living in his parents' basement and has never, ever seen or touched a woman. And then it gets disproven.
Just maybe shows you should probably do a little more research before you make
and actually,
broad statements.
You said you have the IGN. So the woman at the bottom of the images from the Grum's tweet, that's the wife.
Right.
So the top left is the model, then there's Eve, and then that's the wife. And dude, she's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, she looks really good. So I just find that hilarious. And yeah, if they'd only done their homework, maybe they'd be able to find something else to be able to complain about. But then we had the pièce de résistance that happened in the middle of all this. I'm obviously skipping some of these articles because, guys, it's the usual fanfare of Alyssa Mercante complaining about how how Eve looks too feminine. She was obviously drawn by a pedophile or stuff like that, and it's just irrelevant because all of it just got disproven so hard. But then we also had the issue when Hades 2 started releasing images, where we got to see two things happen. One in particular was we got to see the blatant double standard that a lot of these games journalists actually have. Because where they were absolutely horrified at how Eve looked, they were quite literally thirsting over the female characters in Hades 2. One of which is Aphrodite, goddess of fertility. And her model, as you could probably see in the article that we have, she's practically buck. Her hair is covering up all the naughty bits, kind of thing. And so you had these same people saying, how dare you create a character like that? And then immediately, to quote Alyssa Mercante, mommy? Sorry. Because for those who don't know, probably Alex, Alyssa Mercante is gay.
Right.
But again, cannot tolerate how Eve looks in the slightest. Even after the game has since come out. Still can't tolerate her, but absolutely pines over Aphrodite. Any thoughts on that at all?
I mean, I guess people are entitled to their opinions, but
what do you think of Aphrodite?
I'm trying to look at it right now. Let me look. I think the art looks pretty nice, personally. I like the Aphrodite art. Yeah.
I have some issues with some of the facial features and things like that, but I mean, look, the hair covers up the naughty bits. And here's the thing. Who are we talking about? Aphrodite. Not the goddess of love, the goddess of fertility. Guess what fertility is, boys and girls. So, and I mean, frankly, she's at least somewhat portrayed as some people probably get mad at me for saying this, but her stance is portrayed as regal in a way. The fact that she's naked kind of takes away from that. But I love the double standard of a lot of these games journalists, because you can see their tweets in the article that I have here, is that how did they make them hotter and hotter? They must be stopped! It's very funny that there are chuds out there being like, the woke gaming journalists hate sexy women. Meanwhile, my entire timeline is hooting and hollering about these Hades 2 character portraits. Same people that were criticizing Eve were all, oh my gosh, she's so sexy! Over Aphrodite. I'm not going to ask you, like, who you'd have, ultimately, Alex, but there is another double standard here that I think you are very familiar with, that is being showcased here. Do you know by chance where Hades 2 is being developed?
I'm going to assume probably the US?
Yes. Specifically, San Jose, California.
Okay, so yeah, it's domestic. Okay.
Mm-hmm. But
Supergiant Games. Yeah.
Yep, Supergiant Games.
Okay.
But it also shows a very clear other double standard that has been showcased throughout most of this month before Stellar Blade released, which was, if it's an Asian game made in either China, Korea, Japan, any of that, they were criticizing everything about the game. So the examples that I'll give you on this was Unicorn Overlord got a lot of its criticisms. That was made by Atlas, by the way. Unicorn Overlord got a lot of criticism over its female characters. Black Myth Wukong, which is made by a Chinese indie developer, was also getting criticisms about how the game looks and not having enough diversity and all of that stuff. And then, more importantly, Stellar Blade. But during the month of April, we get the Hades 2 reveal. We also got, I believe, the first pics of not Assassin's Creed Shadows, but another Assassin's Creed game where, again, showing off a female character. I believe also another Prince of Persia was coming out where we showcased yet another female character. No problems with any of them. Now, granted, they're not looking like Aphrodite, but they're still kind of risque in how they were looking. So the other double standard is, if it's a Asian game, oh, they absolutely hate it. But if it's made in the West, specifically in North America or Europe, they have no problem. Keep all of the sexy in the games. But Tifa Lockhart, who's made in Japan, no, she's not allowed to have big boobs. Which is a blatant double standard that we've been covering for many years. Which makes absolutely no sense, correct?
Yes.
So at that point, we had all of this happening, and the best part, Alex, is the end result that came out of it. So first of all, you'll notice that I have a third article in there, which was a interview that was conducted between Hyung-tae Kim and Yoko Taro. Do you know who he is?
Name sounds familiar, but I don't know. I don't think I know.
Yoko Taro is the creator of the Nier series.
Oh yeah, Nier, right. Okay.
So he's the guy that comes out with the... I've said this to you before. It's like the Majora's Mask moon, but it's really creepy. It's somehow found a way to be even creepier. He comes out in that headpiece because he's very shy. And so they actually invite him, along with Hyung-tae Kim, to get into an interview together under the presumption that when they start showcasing Stellar Blade, that Yoko Taro is going to have issues with it. And ultimately what happens is quite the opposite. In fact, Yoko Taro loves Stellar Blade and thinks that it actually continues the progression that he was trying to do with Nier Automata. Which, by the way, one of the other double standards that happened this month is, because you and I were both there when they happened, 2B and Bayonetta, 2B is from Nier Automata, both heavily criticized by games journalists. because of their look. Specifically with 2B, in the fact that she was running around in a, I guess it's like a ballet dress, but underneath it is a thong. And it's very easy to get upskirt shots in Nier Automata. So basically, they were criticizing Yoko Taro for trying to play the sex appeal button in order to get people to play his game. And the same thing was also given of Bayonetta. Well, during this Stellar Blade controversy, games journalists actually said, well, we've never had a problem with 2B whatsoever. And it's almost like they don't understand that people are on the internet and they pay attention, because as soon as they would make these statements, people would then go and dig out their previous reviews of where they lambasted 2B and Bayonetta for the way that they looked. Specifically with Bayonetta, how her hair is basically her outfit, and how that is that's apparently the fact that Hideki Kamiya did that set women back 15 to 20 years. Yeah. See, I can already hear it in your voice. You're like, yeah, not really. And I can only imagine, I almost want to be a fly on the wall when this interview was happening, because the interviewer, or the person who's conducting the joint interview, had to have been just pissed off, because Yoko Taro and Hyung-tae Kim are actually hitting it off. In fact, Hyung-tae Kim has looked up to Yoko Taro, and one of the prime inspirations for Stellar Blade was Nier Automata. And so
that's really nice.
Yeah, no, I love the sentiment that's actually said in this. Some of the quotes in here are actually really lovely, considering that this was the first time that either of them had met each other, and it turned out that they actually really, really appreciated each other's work. And so, yeah, here we go. So here's one of the quotes. Your art style really appeals to a Japanese audience. Stellar Blade's graphics, settings, and characters are really a style I think Japanese gamers love. US gamers love them too. If you were to show someone that has no prior knowledge of Nier Automata and Stellar Blade, I think almost all of them would pick Stellar Blade. A white-haired character like 2B is not as conventional. So what he's basically saying is Stellar Blade actually looks, or Eve looks more like a girl next door compared to 2B, which is a lot for Yoko Taro to say, considering 2B is his character. So,
and I think 2B is pretty cute too. I've never played Nier, but I've seen the pictures. I've seen gameplay footage
I'll
elsewhere.
tell you this much. So we've been playing Nier Gestalt for streams, and we'll get around to finishing it, guys. I promise. Just crap is busy, but Automata has obviously been highly requested because of the fact that Automata is basically, to a lot of people, where Nier got popular. So at that point, I've already gotten a bunch of people asking, like, when Automata, and then because I've been doing a lot of fighting games, and in fact, this actually goes back to you now that I think about it, because I've gotten questions to you about whether or not you were aware of a game series now called Grand Blue Fantasy. It started as a mobile game, then became a fighting game, and now it actually earlier this year got like I think it's a hack and slash that was done for it. Have you ever heard of this?
I think I've seen the pictures around. I think I've seen images. Yeah,
I've seen
Grand Blue.
I've seen the fighting game. So especially when they actually just barely re-released that fighting game with additional content and I believe it was updated for modern day consoles. But funniest thing, guess who one of the DLC characters was? 2B.
2B. Okay.
And that was out of nowhere and actually spiked sales at least a little bit for Grand Blue Fantasy. So it's just like, nobody likes 2B, huh? And she's there. I'll actually see if I can find a sprite for her in the game. But ultimately, Alex, the thing that you can take away from all of this is that because of all of the crap that was being spouted about Stellar Blade, guess what happened with it?
I imagine the sales probably went up a little more.
it became the highest pre-order game in the month of April. Not just according to Steam, but also according to PlayStation pre-orders, I believe.
Yeah, I remember hearing that its sale pre-orders were pretty impressive for its time.
No, its numbers were incredible. And part of that was because of all the bad-mouthing. And as soon as people saw that games journalists were kind of up their own ass, they started pre-ordering the game because it actually looked good. One of the other things I liked about it was the unique art direction that people would see when they would go into the trailer for Stellar Blade, because if you look at the art direction for Stellar Blade, it really is kind of reminiscent of like old school anime, like old school Ghost in the Shell kind of thing. And so at that point, like, once I finish this thing, I don't know, maybe you and I'll have to play it. I haven't thought that one through yet, but really quick, here is the 2B in Grand Blue. Let me see if I can bring this up here. So this is one of the models, and obviously has garnered some negative press because of the fact that she's not even wearing a skirt. How dare they? I believe this is her default in Grand Blue.
Oh, it looks great. I like that.
That actually looks really good, considering that, you know, this has kind of like that Chinese or Japanese kind of tint to it, and I believe the original dress is just kind of a generic European style. But I might be wrong about that. Somebody is more than welcome to correct me on this. Yeah, that's ultimately how a lot of the Sweet Baby nonsense worked out for this month. So I'll let you have the final say on how this worked out, Alex. Do you think it worked out well for games journalists?
I mean, to be real, I'm just going to say this probably isn't as big of a deal as it sounds, because just I mean, in general, like a quick look through, just like, I just Googled Stellar Blade, and I just turned on to the news tab to just sort of get a vibe of what kind of articles are being written about it now. And most of them are just like, you know, your basic, like, okay, gameplay tips or critical reviews, maybe and most of the reviews are already positive from critics and audiences alike. I think the audience scores a little higher when you look at Metacritic, but
yeah,
so I'm going to say that to people. It's not worth getting into a tizzy. It's time to get off Twitter if you're going to get your panties in a wad about this.
Right.
Just go play the game, have fun with it.
And what's funny is I actually saw this happen on Twitter, literally, Alex, where I saw somebody complain about it so much that somebody then dared them, well, then go buy the game and tell me it's horrible. And they bought it, and they literally had to apologize because it was a lot better than they thought it was. Never had picked it up, never had seen a trailer, and I literally, like, I want to say it was 4 days after Stellar Blade had launched, so they got a physical copy, and they came out and apologized. They're like, yeah, you know what? I was full of shit. This is actually a really good game.
Good. I mean, that's what I'm saying, people. You don't gotta worry that...
I've even seen a lot of people basically saying that Stellar Blade is basically the direction, gameplay-wise, that Souls likes, not Souls games, Souls likes should go from here on in. And granted, I am nowhere near anybody else, Alex. I'm sure everybody's beaten it except for me. I'm like 15, 20 hours in, and I'm just taking my time. I'm just enjoying shit. All right? Because it's not just that it's good gameplay. Like I said, the art style is amazing. The fact that it's set in this weird post-apocalyptic Earth that you have probably not seen in terms of, like, maybe Fist of the North Star or Ghost in the Shell, something like that. Like, we haven't seen ideas like this in 30 or 40 years out. I mean, for example, one of the best characters that I've come across is just, he feels like he was ripped right out of Ghost in the Shell, because every part of him, he is so old that every part of him is clockwork. Like, and I'm not even saying like titanium, like, you know, finest metals or whatever, rusted metal.
Ah, interesting.
He is fucking frightening in a weird. He's like he's frightening and yet compelling, like Ghost in a Shell was when that first movie came out, and it's the coolest thing ever. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people basically saying that Hyung Tae Kim has trailblazed how Souls-likes should be done, at least mechanically. Not necessarily that they all have to be post-apocalyptic or anything like that. For crying out loud, a lot of people have also been screaming that Hyung Tae Kim has basically redefined how cosmetics have to work in games like this from here on. And he's not even done. He just barely released like a week or two ago a road plan for Stellar Blade. He has like a bunch more outfits coming out that I'm sure games journalists will just love. But unfortunately, we're not done talking about Stellar Blade, because then the Sony happened.
Then the Sony happened.
I feel like we're in like one of those VH1 behind the musics, and then you hit that point of like, and then the drugs came. Because now, and then Sony arrived. So, 2 major controversies for Sony happened in the month of April. And we're going to tackle the first one because it's slightly bigger than Stellar Blade. And that is the Helldivers 2 controversy. So, do you know what Helldivers 2 is?
No, I don't.
Helldivers 2 is, I don't want to say it's a battle royal, because I don't think it really is. It's basically Starship Troopers, the game, and I mean that quite literally. Because the premise of it is that you are soldiers of, and I quote, Super Earth. And Super Earth has sent you out to go and take over and basically conquer planets and get rid of their indigenous life forms for the good of Super Earth, and then terraform that planet and be able to secure it. The best way I know how to describe it is, like, in terms of gameplay, is that it is kind of that Fortnite, but with Destiny elements, where it's kind of like a looter shooter, if you get the term.
Yeah.
So this game it didn't even come out this year, Alex. This game's been out for a while. But the reason that there was controversy is because Sony decided, after some maintenance for Helldivers 2, that they then were going to basically be tyrannical Sony. And decided that they now were going to require that if you were a PC player playing Helldivers 2, because I believe the PC release had just recently come out. If you were a PC player playing Helldivers 2, you were required to link your PlayStation Network account in order to be able to play the game.
Oh, wow.
So, keep in mind, Helldivers 2 is not the first time Sony has released games. I, in fact, own the PC version of Death Stranding. I also know people who own the PC version of 2018 God of War and Ghosts of Tsushima. I reached out to them and I asked if Sony ever required them to link their PSN account. Now, one of them had linked their PSN account because there were benefits, but it wasn't required at that point. Helldivers 2 was the first time that they decided we were going to mandate that you link your Steam and your PlayStation Network accounts together. Typical Sony, right?
Sounds like it, yeah.
And more importantly, they said, oh, well, this is all going to happen over the course of months, so you don't have to worry about it too much. Oh, wait, now it's being required basically right now. There were literally people who could not log into their Helldivers 2 because they would get errors saying that they would require a PlayStation account to be linked to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so here was the deadline. May 6th was when it was going to be, it was going to start, where the game was going to require you to do this. And then ultimately they were hoping to have it all mandated and completed by May 30th. And people were getting hit with this in April. Now, keep in mind, Alex, believe it or not, there are actually countries that don't have access to PlayStation Network, that do have access to Steam, and are able to play Helldivers 2 because of Steam.
Yeah.
And so at that point, you are asking them to get something they literally cannot get because PlayStation Network does not exist in their country.
Mm-hmm.
And they were being required to. So, as you might imagine, Alex, this caused a little bit of a kerfuffle online. Enough so that, unfortunately, the people at Arrowhead Games that develop Helldivers 2, they got caught in the crossfire. So much so that their community managers were basically being harassed endlessly. And granted, I have my own opinions on this later, but some of them cracked and eventually started lashing out at the people who were lashing out at them. Now, thankfully, one community manager in particular, he had like one incident, and then he turned that around and basically said, you know what? I'm going to help you guys. I'm going to try and get things figured out as much as possible. We're going to try and get this fixed for you. I'm talking to everybody possible. So that guy I have no problem complimenting, because ultimately he did ultimately kind of save it for a lot of people. It's just, unfortunately, the other community managers, most of which got fired after this, didn't. And it's because they were getting hammered endlessly. Sony obviously wasn't helping, and some of them lashed out.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes this even worse is, like we said in the last month's podcast, a lot of community managers, they don't work for the company. They are hired, but are basically doing it for free. After this whole incident, Alex, I have no problem telling you, from here on in, this is my viewpoint. If you're going to be a community manager, you had better be working in that office building, and you had better have the ear of the developers. Because otherwise, this shit happens, and who is to blame other than Arrowhead Games and Sony? Because they didn't put somebody there. Instead, they gave somebody a fake title and don't even pay them for it. And that's probably the most shit of this whole thing, right? Is if you're going to be a community manager for like Neptunia or whatever, Alex, shouldn't you work in the same building?
One would think so, but yeah, I guess a lot of these companies probably rely on third parties to kind of broker that for them, I guess.
Or they don't, or they basically just rely on basically taking advantage of people's fandom in order to get them to do tasks that are menial and beneath them, which is in some of the cases, not necessarily with Arrowhead Games, but like for Compulsion Games, even they kind of admitted that that's what happened there when they had community managers. And even Blizzard took advantage of this. You know, I hate to be the guy. I used to be Mr. Blizzard here, and they did it too. So it's just overall a sad thing. Now, thankfully, it took one weekend, Alex. Oh, actually, before I get into that, I also want to bring this up, because this is how bad the situation actually got, Alex. I had to go look this up on a Game Rant article, but it did exist. Sony got so bad in this situation, Alex, that they tried to stealth edit their FAQ on their site. And so let me share this with you really fast, because this was ridiculous, but thankfully, you know, we live in the age of the internet, so if this would actually let me share my freaking screen, I guess it's not going to. Yeah, for some reason Discord isn't gonna let me share it, but I have a copy of it, so I'll just send it over to your Discord if you're okay with that, so you can see it.
Yeah.
So let's see. Boom. And I'm just gonna go ahead and attach this. So they tried to stealth edit their flippin' FAQ on PlayStation to address this situation. And so you can see where they actually said, before May 3rd, do you have to sign into PSN to play PlayStation games on PC? And it says signing into PSN is optional. Then after May 3rd, it says some PlayStation games may require you to sign in. When all of this bullshit was happening, they basically tried to stealth edit it so that they wouldn't get yelled at. So yeah, typical Sony being typical Sony. And thankfully, all it took was 1 weekend, Alex. 1 weekend. And immediately Sony relented. And basically screamed out that, okay, nope, it's not required. Don't worry about it. Helldivers 2 is not going to require a PSN to be linked to your Steam account. So, hooray! We all won, right, Alex?
I don't know, did we?
Well, it does appear that way. But if we know anything about Sony, because you and I have dealt with Sony probably a lot longer than most, this is probably not the end of this. And that's kind of my theory on it, is that they will find another way to be able to implement what they want, which is that they want all Steam accounts having PSN accounts on them. And so at that point, that's probably a little bit more frustrating, because it's just Sony being tyrannical Sony all over again.
Yeah.
So at that point, I mean, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it sounds to me like you kind of have the same concern.
It is a big concern.
Yep.
For sure. Yeah.
So now we can get into the Stellar Blade nonsense. So tyrannical Sony came back the weekend after Stellar Blade launched. And basically, even though Hyung-tae Kim had gotten the approval to be able to have the outfits that were actually in the game, Sony basically tried to pull a 180 and started stealth editing the models of the outfits for Eve in the game. And they basically they put those fixes, quote, fixes, into the day one patch of Stellar Blade. And one of them actually affected the pre-order bonus, that if you pre-ordered Stellar Blade, you got, I believe it was 2 outfits. One that was just a straight up swimsuit, and then the other one was basically like a Chinese dress. Mm-hmm. And the swimsuit was supposed to be like one of those not full frontal, but the ones that have the ginormous slit in the middle of the front, so that you can basically see through to the boobs, kind of thing. They edited that to make it look like there was a tank top underneath, as well as where it was kind of like a thong type of one-piece swimsuit on the bottom. They basically re-edited the model so that it looked more censorable, or looked more censored. And the Chinese dress, I believe, was made to be a little bit longer because it was supposed to be like a really short dress. And this is obviously, these were pre-order bonuses, so people wanted to have these outfits. That's why they pre-ordered the game, and they pre-ordered it at the deluxe edition, which gave it. So they paid extra money in order to be able to get these outfits. And Sony was like, fuck you. We're going to edit these because we don't think that they're proper enough. Now, obviously, Hyung-tae Kim went out and said, well, you guys okayed our outfits, and, actually was having the conversation with Sony, so much so that Sony actually made him come out and make a PR statement basically saying that he was on board with the censorship, even though he had said a month prior Stellar Blade would be uncensored. But we have since now been able to confirm that he was doing that to tote the Sony line so that they could get Stellar Blade out onto the platform. But he also basically had to just kind of sit back and deal with it, and his hands were tied. So it got to a point where things were so bad that Mark Kern, former executive game director of Blizzard, so he worked on the original World of Warcraft all the way up to about Burning Crusade, and then also worked on things like StarCraft and Diablo 3 and stuff like that. Well, You remember when I was dealing with the Nostalria stuff way back when, Alex?
Yeah.
He was actually the one that submitted the petition that Nostalrius had gotten to Blizzard to get them to have that meeting. He immediately reached out to a Korean printing company and created the hashtag Free Stellar Blade, where he created a petition and he wanted to get 100,000 signatures so that they would print the petition and send it to Hyung-tae Kim. Because according to him, he had talked to the guy and he wanted to be able to help him as best as he could. And the petition, I guess, was decided to be the best way to convey what they wanted to Sony. So he immediately started this up, which obviously got games journalists in an uproar, because how dare he? But ultimately, I am happy to tell you, Alex, that it may have taken a couple of extra weeks, but Hyung-tae Kim won against Sony. And what they basically did was they recreated the skimpier outfits and made them entirely different outfits. So you got the censored outfits to appease Sony, but then he gave the pre-order outfits and all of the other skimpy outfits that were that are uncensored as additional outfits in the game. So now you have a choice between the two of them.
That's cool.
So, but ultimately he did win out of this. But you know, the reason I wanted to bring this up is you've dealt with censorship and things like that from Sony. So when you hear this story, does it surprise you? Does it not surprise you? Like what goes through your head on this?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. We've been seeing this trend from Sony the last several years.
Yeah.
That's why again I initially went for Neptunia on Switch, and if the game had run better on Switch, I would have stuck with the Switch version. I mean, so far I don't see a big difference between the Switch and PS version. So if they did anything on it, I don't know, but anyway, that's just one example. But that's why generally when I go for one of those kinds of games like a Neptunia game, I'm gonna probably go for either PC through Steam, but this particular one isn't on Steam right now, or I'll go for Switch. So
right.
Yeah, it's just like, well, we've known this has been Sony's deal for the last few years now.
Yes, absolutely. And what's sad is that Microsoft is also kind of starting to take that stance too. So it's funny that now Nintendo, who has had their own tyrannical points in the past, they are probably the most reliable if you want to be able to get things uncensored.
I know, it's ironic.
It really is, at least until, somebody wakes up over at Nintendo and goes, oh, we should be censoring this stuff. Hopefully they'll never wake up. But unfortunately, because I can't share screens, I don't know why. This is so stupid. I would show you the censored outfits as compared to the originals. What a lot of people are not going to like about what I have to say about it is that I actually don't mind the censored outfits. And that's just because I think they look fine. I really do think that they're just another way to be able to go if you want it. I had an image on my phone, but unfortunately I can't get it over into the Discord because I think it's too big. But it was basically a comparison of like the swimsuit pre-order, and it shows the uncensored and the censored version. But let me see if I can actually. Oh, here we go. There we go. Okay, so this is the uncensored version of the pre-order swimsuit kind of thing. Oh, this might be why I can't share screens. Nope, it isn't. Okay. So that's the uncensored version.
Oh,
roughly
I think it's pretty
what
cute,
that's
to be
supposed
honest.
to be. And then here is the censored version that Sony put out. Thankfully, it's not that difficult for me to bring all of this up. There you go. That's the censored outfit. So obviously, the biggest thing that they did was they just kind of took the cleavage away.
Yeah.
So
I do think it looks kind of cute, though.
I honestly
both outfits are nice.
I honestly like both outfits. I did not pre-order the game, so I don't get it. But it doesn't matter because there's still like a dozen outfits in the game anyway. But a lot of the outfits that I've actually seen have been just fine. They're skimpy as crap, and you know what? Considering that you have to play this game with this character for as long as you have to, I don't see a problem if you want, because at that point, since there's like 12 outfits, I can just switch to whatever outfit I want to wear on that given day, right?
Yeah. See,
So,
plus her default outfit's already pretty sexy by itself. So there you go.
I mean, that's just because it makes her look like a woman. it's really what it like. I don't know how else to explain it to other people, but the biggest thing about the original outfit is just it makes her look feminine. It really does. And do you want to know the coolest part about it, Alex? So you see that hair ribbon in her hair?
Yeah.
That's her sword.
Oh wow.
It actually transforms into a sword. That just probably blew your mind, didn't it? It blew mine when I actually saw it happen. It literally transformed into a sword. I'm like, oh shit, that's amazing. And for all the people who are just screaming, well, you guys just want boobs and all, there are very conservative outfits amongst all of them, and I have a few of them actually, and I think she still looks good. Especially once you get glasses on her, then she just looks like that one chick librarian that everybody thinks is hot. So yeah, I literally don't have a problem with how they made her look. But yeah, so Sony got to have a little bit of Dominion this month, which unfortunately was not very surprising to you. Alex, I'm going to let you have the last word since you've probably dealt with more Sony censorship than I have. You get the last word on this story.
And it's kind of also the unfortunate reality we all live in, that because gaming has become, it's gone from hobby, niche, something that kind of appeals to a handful of people, to a multi-billion dollar industry. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, as these companies have gotten so big and as the medium's gotten bigger, well, there's just a lot more tastes and a lot more people to try to appeal to. And unfortunately, you're not going to get them all, I guess. And that's just kind of how it is.
Well, and importantly, like, I know that a lot of people want to throw out the argument of like, well, these companies need to be thinking globally. They really don't. Because here's the thing. You need to get the game out first. And you need to be able to start getting some kind of money from it. And if that means that the people in Europe have to wait a little bit because we have to do a bunch of different sensibilities, at least then you have some money to be able to work on that instead of having zero money when you have to release it. And so,
see, but well, you're kind of right, but unfortunately, it just can't really work like that anymore because these games are so big, they cost so much money to make now that, well, they kind of have to start thinking about these things ahead of time. They do have to start thinking about how to maximize their returns on investment as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But unfortunately, that does come to the detriment.
But who should you ultimately listen to, Alex? The people who have bought your game or have the intention of buying your game, or people who are just complaining and have no intention of buying your game whatsoever?
Ideally, that's
where the problem comes.
Yeah, but that's also where it's that's kind of besides pre-orders, it's kind of hard to gauge like who is truly going to be the audience.
The people who pre-ordered are screaming, no, we don't want that censorship. No, we want to have the skimpy characters. And then you have a bunch of people who are saying that they're not going to buy the game because they have the skimpy outfits. Who do you listen to?
Perhaps I don't think there's any easy answers here.
There really isn't.
Right?
But to me, at least at this point, considering the rampant amount of people that scream at gamers, and it's very clear that they're never going to be putting a dime down on any of these games, I'm going to basically make the assumption of the people whose butts are already in the seats. And so at that point, that it's a difficult decision, but it's what you got to do right now. What's funny out of all of this is that you remember a while back when we talked about how the developer of the Tale series, they basically decided to do two different versions.
Right.
And so they did a censored version and a non-censored version. I remember Brinton and I actually had a discussion about how they should just do a toggle in the game. According to Mark Kern actually got this question during this whole Stellar Blade debacle. And he actually pointed out internally the way that the games are made right now, it would actually be more expensive to do the toggle than to just do what the Tales people did, ultimately. Because
Yeah, I
what
can
you're
imagine.
basically looking at, and it actually makes sense, is that, you know, your game is like 3 years into development, right? And now you're just barely coming to realize, oh, we might have censorship problems, and you want to be able to put a toggle in. Well, that toggle is like some of the base framework that you would have to put in there, and so that should have been happening in like month 1 kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot more expensive to go redo all of that stuff just to put the toggle in, as opposed to what the Tales people did, which is just, okay, we'll do a European version and a rest of the world version.
And that kind of reminds me of what Romney would often say when he was still on the podcast, is like, games really need to have a bit better sense of pre-production planning to avoid pitfalls like these.
Right. But like I said, you know, this is something you should be putting in month 1. Well, wouldn't that wouldn't that solve the discussion of thinking globally? Is if just game companies basically said, yeah, okay, well, we'll make this as cheap as we possibly can. We'll just put the toggle in at the beginning of development, and that way we don't have to worry about it later. And all we have to do is program the toggle how it's supposed to censor.
Yeah, and like I said, that's why I was kind of quoting back to Romney, because he's like, because you're right, that's something they should be thinking about at the on day one.
Right.
It's like, what is your reach? You know, this is the things you should be thinking about in pre-production. It's like, what is your reach? What is your audience? What is your target? Are you trying to go for a very broad audience? Are you trying to have a big global, trying to go for a big global market? You know, what is your expected budget? You know, games might go over budget, but just say you've already set yourself for, I don't know, $200 million as your preliminary budget. Okay, so you're like, what's it going to take to make at least $200 million back, assuming we don't go horribly over budget?
Conscious of what you're trying to do in these angles. And here's the thing too, there is, I can already feel like a few people screaming at me going, there's a problem with that, because you basically are trying to reinstitute, in a weird way, region locks, because you're basically saying, okay, well, if this is, you know, played in Europe, then the toggle region locks it to Europe censorship kind of thing. And you're right, but right now, that's the best thing I can think of, budget-wise, to be able to do it. And unfortunately, that's the reason I'm being financially conscious of that, is that's the biggest problem in the gaming industry right now, is money being used in the wrong ways. And so I'm trying to find the conscious ways to be able to do that. But yeah, no, ultimately, I think you're right on this, is that there are definitely some arguments to be had here. But one thing that definitely needs to stop happening, and I think we can both agree on this, is that, okay, I get it. When game companies and even film companies do this, when they are successful, they get a bit of an ego. And that's when problems like this happen. That's when problems like the Helldivers controversy happen. Maybe having that humility, just period. And now I'm going to give some credit, because Nintendo has been consistent on this over the last few years. They've been consistent on trying to stay humble and trying to keep kind of the vision of Satoru Iwata going, where it's always about the audience and all that. So they're already kind of doing that. Now, Sony and Microsoft, maybe you guys should start doing it and start being more humble when it comes to stuff like this. And that way we don't have Helldivers 2 controversies over and over. But
yeah, I fear that's a tall order for a multi-billion-dollar company.
I completely agree. I mean, like, I'm basically asking for the Wolpertinger to come out of nowhere. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into the next story that we have here, which was, and this one I really wish that we could have talked about as it was happening, but Alex, you'll be so proud. Bully Hunters 2 basically happened.
Why are they trying again? It didn't work the first time.
That's a very good question, but yet they are. Now, it's not the same people, but ultimately a consultancy firm called the Melanin Gamers. That's already a good sign, right? The Melanin Gamers. They basically, what was that?
I was just echoing what you're saying.
Yep,
just keep going.
The Melanin Gamers launched a website with a rating system for, quote, toxicity in the game environment. So basically, if you remember way back when, I can't remember what the site's actual name was, where it actually would rate YouTubers and determine, like, basically try to break them up into categories and say, well...
Is it Social Blade?
No, not Social Blade. It was another one, and it didn't last very long. But it was like, if you looked up, say, a person like Destiny on YouTube, it would say, like, social commentary or something like that. But then if you looked up somebody like Tim Pool, it would be like, anti-woke, 1,000%, news, 10%. And it was so stupid that it didn't last. Because ultimately everybody saw what it was. It was basically trying to label and put everybody into their own, specific lunch tables, so to speak.
Right.
That's basically what this is doing. This website was basically going to have very ambiguous questionnaires that you could do about a specific game that would then take your answers and rate the toxicity of the game based on your answers. And trust me when I say this, Alex, the questionnaire for it, horribly ambiguous. So wide-ranged that anything could count as toxicity for these games. Yeah. And the best part about it is that some of the games that actually got rated the highest, so this should be no surprise. 78%, according to this website, 78% of Call of Duty players were so Call of Duty was 78% toxic.
Oh, I believe it.
Because,
Call of Duty.
Or actually, was that the official? Oh no, this is the breakdown of it. So yeah, 78% of Call of Duty players face racism, 90% face direct violent threats, 67% face gender discrimination. And then they would also go into things like Fortnite, which had 69% toxicity. But then we even had a 56% toxicity rating for Minecraft.
Minecraft, really?
Yes. According to this website, it claimed that 56% of players face racism, 54% face gender discrimination, and 78% face direct violent threats on Minecraft. It has no way to verify this other than the ambiguous questionnaire, which you can literally just say, like, this is for this game, and then go through the exact same questions, and you get that toxicity rating. It doesn't even try to go to the games themselves and actually try to rate it or anything like that. Nope. Just based on the questionnaire. And so this affectionately got called Bully Hunters 2.0, because what they basically wanted to do, much like Bully Hunters, was control saying which game people should be playing because of how toxic that game is. And we actually had a few channels go out and try this system on just random games. And it was I have no problem telling you this, Alex. It was very easy to manipulate.
Of course it is. These always are. Yes.
And so at that point, you and I could have easily labeled the original Super Mario Brothers as a toxic game. It's not, it doesn't even have an online component, and we could still find a way to be able to do it. And so ultimately, you can imagine how well this website worked out.
Not at all, I'm sure.
No. And in fact, the Melanin Gamers saw lots of criticism for it. In fact, this was one of the few times where we actually saw Elon Musk on Twitter criticize the Melanin Gamers for this. Now, granted, Twitter is his platform now. He can comment whenever he wants, but he still kind of stays out of a lot of shit. And even he came out and said, even he came out and basically said, really? Minecraft's toxic? Really?
Apparently so.
Yeah.
I know it.
According to this one. Now, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, Bully Hunters was supposed to be an organization where in order to fight the toxicity of, say, Call of Duty lobbies, if somebody was getting oppressed, you would be able to call a bully hunter, a better, like basically a pro gamer, roughly, and they would go into your Call of Duty lobby and start giving shit to the person who was oppressing you. And everybody saw the writing on the wall of how that would turn out, because it was basically a cyclical system that would have eaten itself. And bully hunters it didn't last more than 2 days after it was unveiled, and everybody was fired. And so you can imagine how well this website worked out in response to that. It didn't.
No,
I think the site is still. I think the site is still up, but it isn't really getting any toxicity ratings anymore. So sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I was just saying it didn't work the first time. It's not going to work the second time.
No, so I'm just going to give you the final thought on this, because that's pretty much what it was.
That's it. That's my only thought. It didn't work the first time. It's not going to work this time.
But here's the best part about it. Okay, so these were the official top games that were listed on it when it launched. Okay, are you ready for this, Alex?
Okay.
So Call of Duty, obviously, probably very toxic. Fortnite, Minecraft, Apex Legends, Valorant, Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Wow.
I'm guessing that's a perfect example of how easily this could have been manipulated. Rocket League, Destiny 2, Halo Infinite, and GTA Online. 2 of these things are not like the others. 2 of these things just don't belong. And just showed to everybody, like, all it would take is Nintendo saying the wrong thing. I'm pretty sure at some point they wanted to put Stellar Blade up on this website as toxic. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
These were all probably fan submissions, yeah, or not fan, but people.
These were open submissions, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure a fair amount of these were shit posts. So
probably, and ultimately, the funniest thing is that I don't think these people realize this could have blown up in their own damn faces. The games that they wanted could have easily gotten basically review bombed here because of how ambiguous the system is. And then you could have literally seen, like, I don't know, we just barely talked about Hades 2. Hades 2 could have walked away with a toxicity rating of 100% because of how they built the system. Good God, man. This wasn't going to work out for you or anybody. So, yeah, I think Alex's final thoughts on this are perfect. Don't do this. It doesn't work out.
Yeah, don't do it.
And so at that point, let's go ahead and get into the next story here, which is a little bit more bad news. I'm sorry, but, unfortunately it was April, which means, for a lot of people who don't know this, a lot of major media companies' fiscal financial year ends in March. And so April is usually when we start hearing the results of the previous fiscal year. And for the gaming industry, that wasn't going to be a good thing, right, Alex? Because we're hearing about all these layoffs that are happening and everything like that. So a lot of people were dreading seeing what these were probably going to be saying. One of which was not fun for me because, as people know, I'm a big fan of Square Enix. And Square Enix actually had to come out and basically say that they were, 200 million plus in the hole because of not just Avengers. I know a lot of people want to get mad at me for saying it's just Avengers. It isn't just Avengers. They had a lot of failures in the meantime of that. There were a bunch of games like Babylon's Fall that didn't do well, alongside Forspoken, which was basically a complete disaster. It bombed so hard the company got shut down that made it. Avengers also contributed to that because it was a huge financial failure. But even Square Enix had to admit that the games that did do well, Alex, last year, they still didn't meet the numbers that they needed. So, for example, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which came out this year, even its sales expectations were below what Square Enix had estimated it would make. The same thing happened for Final Fantasy 16. The same thing happened for games like Harvestella. All of them didn't meet. And so Square Enix, I have no problem telling you all, is in a bad state. But the reason that I'm bringing this in particular is because I don't want to just talk about, okay, layoffs are happening worldwide and the games industry is just effing themselves over, because some of those companies actually started to issue new strategies in order to be able to stay afloat. And I wanted to be able to highlight some of those companies in particular, because, you know, we already talked about some of the problems in the previous month's podcast, and I kind of teased that we would get into these, but we started to hear from some of the other companies that were issuing completely different financial strategies in order to stay afloat while all of this bull crap is happening. And the first one that I want to highlight here is Don't Nod. So for those who don't know, Don't Nod is the game company that creates the Life is Strange series. I kind of wish we had Brenton here to be able to talk about this, because he is a Life is Strange fan, so he's very much in Don't Nod's favor. I like them. I think they're a good developer. So I would love to be able to show this strategy that they're basically coming out with and see what Brenton had to say about it. But basically, their strategy was to come out and basically state that, yeah, we can't be a AAA company. We can't give you AAA quality. We'll have to step ourselves down and consider ourselves a AA company. And when they did that, they also basically had to admit that they did have some big projects in the works. They had to put them on hold for the time being. They're not gone completely, Alex, but they're on the shelf. Let's put it that way, because financially can't afford them. And instead, the focus was trying to get out AA projects that would be able to earn them some capital in order to be able to afford those big AAA ideas that they had to put on the shelf. One of which got unveiled about a month ago, which was their Life is Strange sequel. And so they're going to be having that coming out very soon. And we even have some teasings of other things that are coming out from Don't Nod. But the premise of everything that they're basically doing is saying, we can't do what AAA currently is expected to do, especially since we self-publish. We basically have to do everything financially minded from here on in so that we can keep everybody in their jobs and we don't have to let anybody go. Which the Don't Nod people actually did come out and say, like, that's one of the reasons they're doing this, is they don't want to have to lay people off if they don't have to. Which, to me, that's a good sign. Like, that shows to me you care about your employees and you want to be able to have them to continue to work on projects. So overall, like, what do you think about that? The fact that they're saying, okay, well, we're going to step down to a AA kind of deal, put a bunch of big projects on the shelf and get out what we can.
That's good. I think it's a company that kind of realizes it's got to get itself into a better financial order here, rather than just keep chasing down the kind of bottomless rabbit hole that is AAA here.
Well, and what makes that even more important is Don't Nod. A lot of the stuff that they're known for in the last 5 or so years, Alex, would basically put them in kind of the same place as Telltale was a few years ago, where they have stuff like Life is Strange, which is adventure games, but then they also had stuff like Vampire, which was adventure meets Souls-like kind of gameplay. And so that's really kind of the stuff that they're known for. And so at that point, like, they basically are saying, okay, we're going to stay in our wheelhouse and we're going to keep earning money until we can afford the more ambitious stuff. Because one of the things they did admit is one of those projects was something that they would probably have to bring in new people for. Which basically made it sound like it was a genre they were not familiar with. So I think that's a great idea. Like, do what you need to do to stay afloat until the industry kind of rights itself. And then at that point, once you have some capital to be able to work with, go nuts.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So that's Don't Nod. That was kind of their answer for it. The other one I want to bring up, and this is very weird and appropriate, is Larian Studios. For those who don't remember, Larian is the company that made Baldur's Gate 3. You know, Game of the Year last year. So what was their answer to all of this situation? Well, they basically got out of AAA gaming. No, I'm not kidding. They were immediately approached by Wizards of the Coast and asked if they wanted to do Baldur's Gate 4. Now, they had a bunch of other reasons to say they didn't want to do it. Aside from financial, they actually didn't like their experience. According to the vice president of Larian, they didn't like working with Wizards of the Coast with the D&D license. And so they basically opted to, because of the money that they had gotten from Baldur's Gate 3, they stepped away from doing anything with Wizards anymore and instead want to go work on their own internal project that wasn't going to be kind of a AAA endeavor, but they had the capital to do it. And so they actually wanted to be able to go work on it and not have to worry about putting out another Baldur's Gate for somebody else. Which I think is yet another good idea. Is they basically said, screw you. Because here's the thing. While they were saying this, they were basically screaming at the gaming industry and saying all of the things that we pointed out in last month's podcast and accusing them of doing those things and making it unsustainable for any company to be able to succeed in the industry. So why even bother? And so their answer was basically to flip the middle finger to everybody and go, we're going to go work on our own thing. Now, should they have flipped the middle finger? Probably not. But I do appreciate what they were basically saying. Is like, okay, we did this, and we don't see anything good happening in AAA. We're going to go work on this thing with the money that we've gained, and we'll come back in a few years, and we'll see if you like it. I think that was ultimately a good idea. And probably the direction that they should have gone, because if you think about it, they basically also stepped down from being a AAA developer into an indie developer, in a way. Yeah. So, or a second or a third party developer kind of thing. And because of the fact they did so well with Baldur's Gate 3, I'm pretty sure the second anybody sees their logo, they are going to start cheering when they see the new project. I think that's safe to say. They already have tons of accolades from Baldur's Gate 3, which to me proves that they are a developer that cares. And that's something that we don't really see that much with AAA developers, I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
So the third one that I want to showcase is Square Enix. So after all of this came out, Alex, they immediately showed us what their intentions are from here on in for their development process. So I'm just going to go over like the big pieces, and you can say like whether or not you think these are going to be a good idea or a bad idea kind of thing. Okay. First of all, they are no longer going to be exclusive to Sony.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good idea.
So they are going to be shifting to a multi-platform strategy. This is actually something that I remember in the past you and I have kind of butted heads over. And because I tend to be the person that thinks, exclusivity is cool because it gets people to think that, okay, this is a Sony thing, this is a Microsoft thing. But in the climate that we're currently in, Alex, I'm on your side on this one. I don't think anybody can really afford to not be multi-platform right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever money you can get is whatever money you can get.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I think that Square Enix made the right decision in this regard. They really did need to go multi-platform and allow for their games to come out on as many platforms as possible. And one of the first things that they did in response to this was about a month later, they announced that officially all of the Kingdom Hearts games would be available on PC for the first time.
Yeah, smart.
There you go, right? That's a lot of money coming back. especially since I know of a bunch of Steam modders that would really love to get their hands on a Kingdom Hearts game. And as long as Square Enix doesn't have a problem with that, good on them. And I actually think that's a good advertising point, because we do know that they have a mobile game that's getting ready to come out, but we also know that Kingdom Hearts 4 is in development. It's one of the few projects that is still in development. And that's the next big thing that happened here. A lot of projects got canceled. And the reasoning that was said behind this was a lot of those projects were either in early planning stages, or it had just been ruled that the idea that they had, there just wasn't enough there to be able to pursue a full video game release with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big game releases right now that we can confirm are still going on are Kingdom Hearts 4, the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, whatever that ends up being called, and they were also working on some Dragon Quest titles. And so at that point, we know that they're working on that. Along with,
I mean, Dragon Quest is huge, so that's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but they also had some mana games coming out this year, and one of the possible projects that they were working on was another mana game. But because of that, a bunch of other projects got put on the shelf, and their teams were basically reallocated to other priorities. One of which that was disappointing to me, even though I haven't been able to confirm it yet, was the remake of Chrono Trigger. Might have been one of them.
I'm doubting that's ever been a thing.
Maybe they were trying to get it off the ground. That's my guess. They were trying to get it off the ground because of Akira Toriyama's passing, and it just wasn't far enough along to be able to do it.
I mean, they've tried multiple times over the years to get the team back together to try and make a third game, but they've said many times through different interviews, it's just never going to happen. It was a one-time thing, and
that's why I do tend to believe, like, because again, I haven't confirmed it, but if it was, it probably was early enough in development that they were trying to work out a lot of issues, and they hadn't even started on working those issues out. So at that point, that was easy enough to put on the shelf. However, I'm still of the opinion that if they did do a Chrono Trigger remake, that thing, especially with a multi-platform strategy, that would go like gangbusters right now.
Yeah, I think it would.
Especially with the re-release of Chrono Cross. I think that would be ideal at this point.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of the other projects we did find out, but we found out at later months, so I'm not necessarily going to unveil them just yet. But so we have the multi-platform strategy. We had cutting down to bare minimum of the games that they have coming out right now. So those are some of their strategies from here on in. Next one was basically, so a lot of people don't know this, Square Enix was kind of moving to the States. They had a Square Enix of America office, and it looked like they were actually going to have like prime development going on there. That office is no longer. They shut all of that down, basically deeming it a financial strain, and basically moved everything in-house. So I think they have a few people that are working remotely for them, but ultimately most of it is being done from the Japanese office. Now, I know a lot of people would say from a global perspective, that's a bad idea. I think, in all honesty, it's both a good and a bad idea, but right now it's more of a good idea because of the fact that it saves money. Because now you don't have to worry about paying for real estate in different countries and having to pay additional costs to have a bunch of employees remoting in, whether they be artists or coders or anything like that. And so they basically cut things down to bare minimum in order to have as little cost going into a lot of these projects as possible in order to get those projects out. So do you have any thoughts on that particular one?
Yeah, it makes sense. I knew they had a U.S. office. I didn't think they did any development. I just assumed it was for,
No,
regional
they were
releases and whatnot.
transitioning in order to make it a development office.
Ah, I did not know that. That's
yeah, but
interesting.
originally it was going to be like Sega of America, how they had theirs, where it was like a PR office kind of thing.
Right.
But they were going to make it bigger, and they have since decided, no, we're not going to do that because we don't have the funds to be able to do it.
Yeah, it makes sense. Just unfortunately, you got to cut back on probably branch offices for now.
But I'm glad that you brought that, or I'm glad that you mentioned that, because they actually got skewered pretty hard for doing that. And frankly, the way that I kind of look at it is, if your bank account is tight, do you really have? Because extra real estate in other countries brings up numerous amounts of problems, including office expenses and things like that, and they just can't have like anything last minute happen that could put them in the hole. And that's unfortunately one of the ways for at least the gaming industry for that to happen. So keeping everything internally, it's just the way to be able to do it. It's especially if you also are working on projects that must be successful and you cannot have them leaking, otherwise it might hurt them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I tend to think that that's actually a great thing. And then here's the final one, and this should sound like common sense, Alex, but I mean, if it doesn't to you, then you'll obviously let me know. Having a more quality over quantity approach to their video game development ambitions.
I mean, were they releasing a ton of games in particular? I didn't realize Square's output was that big.
They actually were, believe it or not. Now, a lot of those games were coming out through like Crystal Dynamics and things like that, and technically Crystal Dynamics was theirs.
Right.
They actually, one of the big, granted, Avengers was a big problem. I'm not saying it wasn't, guys. And the fact that they weren't earning the money that they thought they should off of FF7 Remake and all that stuff, that's a problem. But the other problem that they were having was they were trying to put out a bunch of smaller titles like Babylon's Fall that were trying to accommodate for niches that they weren't 100% committed to, and didn't want to put the financial backing in. They wanted to make sure that it was going to be a damn good success before they put the financial backing behind it. And the problem is that because they didn't put the financial backing behind it, the games failed. And they came off as duds. So, for example, one of the big ones that happened last year was Foam Stars. Foam Stars was supposed to be Square Enix's answer to Splatoon, Alex. But because they kind of half-heartedly released that, and they didn't really have a lot of the multiplayer asset or the multiplayer servers there to be able to run a whole lot of games, nobody really trusted them to be able to actually want to compete against Splatoon, of all things. And so Foam Stars just kind of quietly went into the night. Which is sad, because I actually, me and Brinton both thought Foam Stars was a good idea. Because we'd like to see more shooters that are just more lighthearted than like Call of Duty. We want to see more Splatoons. But part of the way that you make those, online multiplayer type games work is that you're 100% backing them. Another example would be, and I know some people are going to get mad at me for bringing this up, but Final Fantasy VII: The First Soldier. It was Final Fantasy VII Fortnite. I'm not shitting you, Alex. That's what it was.
Wow. Okay.
It was them trying to basically go into the, cash in on the Fortnite money. And because they half-assed it, I shouldn't say half-assed it. They went in half-hearted. Basically assuming that they're not going to compete with Fortnite. They didn't compete with Fortnite. Nobody left to go try the First Soldier, and it didn't work out. And they have lots of games that kind of follow this particular formula. The big ones that people know about, obviously, is Forspoken. And the funniest thing about that is that, yes, it was a bad game. Like, it's badly written, bad dialogue, all that stuff. And I actually do wonder, given recent news, if Sweet Baby was somewhat involved in the writing of that game. But one thing that actually did come out of that people are hoping we'll see later is some of the changes to hack and slash games that Forspoken tried to add into the mechanics formula for that genre. That's the only thing that really got complimented, so who knows? Maybe we'll see a Devil May Cry or a Bayonetta that uses the same kind of parkour style that Forspoken did, but it's just too bad that, it was a dud, and so it didn't do well, and therefore Square Enix had to end up footing the bill for that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why they're doing what they are doing, which is basically putting quality over quantity. They're not worrying about having, at minimum 10 releases of brand new IPs. Instead, they are focusing on the IPs that they know make money, and in turn, doing everything in their power to make sure that those things are successful. So, for example, one of the things that I have noticed that they have done was when they announced Visions of Mana way back last year, it was just kind of a, oh yeah, by the way, this is happening kind of thing. And the advertisements for Visions of Mana have since gone on steroids since then. And we are seeing lots of trailers for gameplay and for story trailers and everything that they're trying to do with that, as well as advertising some of their previous Mana projects along with Visions of Mana, and basically continuing to say, oh yeah, by the way, this is a sequel. This is like the first sequel we've had in the Mana series in a decade, at least. And so they've really kind of gone all in on advertising Visions of Mana, as well as another game that's going to be a Souls-like, but for some reason has the same kind of art style as Kingdom Hearts. I'm not remembering the name off the top of my head, but they just barely announced that that game is going to have a, not No More Heroes, The World Ends With You crossover DLC for it. So already, we're seeing a lot of backing from Square Enix on the games that they are putting out, which I think personally is exactly what they should be doing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that sounds pretty reasonable.
Yep. And even with, when we're recording this, Dawn Trail, the Final Fantasy XIV expansion that came out, that's out, that's up and running, and it should be doing fairly well. The last time I saw the numbers, it's performing competently. So at that point, yeah, right now things are looking more positive for Square Enix, but we won't know until the following month if this strategy worked out. So ultimately, that's pretty much it for this story. Alex, you get the final say on this. Are these do you think these strategies will have long-lasting application, or do you think these companies are done?
I think Square Enix can weather this so long as they don't make another dumb decision like, chasing NFTs again, like they tried to do.
Oh,
that's another reason they're in this stupid mess. Good
that's
job,
another
Square
reason.
Enix.
I completely forgot about the NFTs, and yeah, they did that.
Yeah, because the bottom of that whole gimmick or grift or whatever fell out pretty fast. So, yeah, Square Enix is big enough and they're diverse enough of a company they can weather this pretty well. I mean, I don't know, how's their multimedia facets doing, because obviously they're also in they publish manga and they produce anime, so I don't know how they're doing on that end. But
the manga branch I know is still in the works, or they're still working on projects. I think they have a manga that's going to be Mana related, that's going to be coming out around the same time as Visions.
Right.
But I don't know about the rest, unfortunately.
Yeah, so
I do know that one of the things that may have been shelved was the Kingdom Hearts anime that they were talking about with Disney Plus. I think that's been shelved.
Right. Okay.
So that's kind of the deal. But overall, the strategy of basically not trying to be AAA, instead being kind of AA multi-platform studios, you think this is a better way to be able to do it?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. And then the last story that we have tonight, unfortunately, is more bad financial news. But unfortunately, we just can't avoid this stuff. We also got the Disney box office, and it's a lot worse than people thought it was going to be. So according to Forbes, Disney had to admit in April that they had lost over $230 million over the course of many films, not just actually, sorry, the over the 200 is just with one movie, but they lost a lot more than that. Mm-hmm. The 237 that I'm talking about specifically was the Marvels. And that was the what was that? That was the highly anticipated title a few years ago. And I do remember seeing last year that they were kind of dialing it down and saying it may fail. And it failed to the tune of 237 million. But that's not the only one, Alex. Because
not the only one.
As far as bombs go, like of the top 5 bombs that happened last year, 4 of them are Disney. The other one is DC. So Marvel's had a 237 million loss. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny had 143 million. Wish, which was supposed to be their tribute film for being around for over 100 years, lost 131 million. And apparently they were rebooting the Haunted Mansion. I didn't even know they were doing that. And that lost 117 million.
Yeah, I saw previews for the Haunted Mansion, but I never saw the movie, of course.
Oh my gosh. And I even did the math on this, and it came out to be basically over 700 million that Disney lost from these 4 movies alone. even with losses of like Guardians of the Galaxy 3, because they even had to come out and admit that didn't perform the way they wanted. So right now I do find it kind of funny that they are continuing the Marvel strategy, because while they are announcing this, they are continuing to talk about Captain America 4, as well as basically rewriting the next Avengers movie. And I have no problem telling you this, Alex. I don't think they should be worrying about Marvel right now.
Yeah, I think it might be time to put Marvel to bed. I don't know. Guardians 3 still did well. I mean, it made over 800 million, so
yeah,
I think it did all right.
It was apparently 100 million shy of what they expected it to be.
Okay. So
at that point, I guess you can
under expectations. Only Disney would call that a failure, but it's like, yeah, under expectations, but it seems like it at least did all right at the box office.
But it's Disney, boys and girls. Losing money to them is like burning it in order to light a cigarette. Not in this case, guys. 200 million is still 200 million. 100 million is still 100 million. That's still a lot to lose. So they're not in good shape here. And even like 10 million. Let's just say if Guardians 3 was 10 million short of their expectations. Like 10 million is still a lot of money for their company, especially considering some of the renovations that they've had to do to the parks. They had to basically scrap their whole Star Wars Galactic Hotel for their cruise lines. What I'm saying is that they're bleeding a lot of money out and they're not bringing enough back in. And that's where the real problem comes in here. Now, I know that Bob Iger wants to continue to tell us that it's okay because Deadpool and Friend is going to make all that money back. And I'm going to be honest with you, Alex. I don't think it is.
I'm gonna say Deadpool's going to do well, though.
I think it'll do well, but I don't think it'll be the numbers that they want. I mean, if
maybe
Guardians
not
couldn't even do it, then I don't think Deadpool will either. And more importantly, I don't think, like, for as much as people are saying, like, oh yeah, it's gonna be Disney, and so it's but they've already said that it's gonna be a rated R film. I doubt it. I think they're gonna censor down Deadpool hard, and the only reason we're not hearing Ryan Reynolds talking badly of them is because he's on contract right now. I don't think you'd ever get Hugh Jackman to admit something did badly, because Hugh Jackman is always trying to be the good guy. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be their saving grace. Bottom line, I don't think it's going to be their saving grace in the slightest. maybe it'll help them get through to the following year, because their next year is supposed to be the X-Men reboot and the Fantastic Four reboot. Maybe it'll get them through to there, but even then, I don't think those reboots are going to do very well either.
All right, I just checked, Adam. Deadpool and Wolverine is rated R.
Well, sure. I still think it's going to get censored down. I still think Deadpool 1 and 2 are going to be way more gory than this will be.
Yeah, but it's still got the R rating, so that's already at least more gutsy than you might expect for Disney when they already did.
But let me ask,
especially when they
go ahead.
Well, okay, well, considering just a few years ago they did Once Upon a Deadpool, the re-release of the original Deadpool, just with a PG-13 rating. So if they're still sticking to the R, right, they at least have a slight chance.
Maybe. But let me ask this. Are you going to be rushing to a movie theater to see it?
Right now, no, but that's just because I'm still on a cane.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Rushing is probably not the word. But that's kind of my problem too, is like, as soon as they announced this, like it didn't make me want to go immediately get a ticket. Immediately it made me go, really? You have to bring back Hugh Jackman? I mean, this is what, the third time that he's come back as Wolverine?
Yeah, but it is Deadpool and Wolverine. They're like arch rivals.
See, I don't know if I would agree with that, but that's because of the comic book bromance that Deadpool believes they are. I mean, I think of references to Deadpool the game, and that's like the perfect example. Like,
true.
They're like a really weird odd couple kind of buddy cop movie where Wolverine just hates Deadpool, but Deadpool is like secretly in love with Wolverine. So that's kind of the problem with that assessment. But yeah, I think we're both in agreement though. This is not going to make the money back that they desperately need. If anything, it'll get them through to the next year, and then hopefully those films can put them back on a better financial standing. And yeah, I don't know. Like the X-Men reboot, we haven't seen enough of that, and Fantastic Four, what I have seen hasn't really made me jump in to go into the theater for it. Do you think those two would save them next year? I'm kind of not. I'm kind of not in that frame of mind.
I don't think so either. I think superheroes are just kind of, people are getting a little sick of the superhero genre right now.
I think so. Now, granted, I've said numerous times on past podcasts, I really do think it would be a very good idea for Disney to take both Marvel and Star Wars IPs and just put them on the shelf for like 5 to 10 years and go work on worthwhile stories in the meantime. I don't think they're going to do that. I think they have to continue to put out Marvel and Star Wars stuff because it's expected. And so at that point, I don't know. I think honestly, they're, unless unless they can find some genuine story that people want to get behind, it's probably not going to do very well for them. I hate to say that too. Like I genuinely don't want Marvel or Star Wars to fail, but right now, the way that they're going, I don't see failure as any other option.
Yeah.
So, any final thoughts that you have on this one?
Not really. It's just, yeah, unfortunately, it's a bad year for movies. I mean, it's a bad time for movies, period, because the old theater model is kind of going out, and we're still kind of stuck in this middle transition period between streaming, but even streaming starting to have the cracks show in that system. So we're all just kind of like, what the hell do we do?
Well, and I just barely saw, what was it? I think it was HBO or Max was basically screaming for streaming platforms to merge together. And immediately people are already making the jokes of like, oh, great, it's the second coming of cable.
Yeah.
So, like, nobody.
A lot of people are predicting that. Like, in time, some of these bundles are probably, these streaming services are going to start bundling, and it is going to pretty much be what cable was.
I honestly think they already are, because they're already trying to work out things. Like I said this to you last month, where I have Paramount Plus through my Walmart Plus subscription, and I have HBO Max through my phone. I think they already are. They're just trying to find. They're not merging with each other. They're instead merging with other companies for other known subscriptions that people have to have. And maybe that's the way to do it. I don't know if I would 100% agree with it, but maybe that's the way to do it. But yeah, no, I've seen the discussions, and you know what? Maybe it is for the best. Maybe that's what they got to do, but I don't think the viewership's going to appreciate that much. That's kind of the sad reality of the whole situation. But unfortunately, we are out of time. So we have gladly put the month of April in the books, Alex. We should be very proud of ourselves, because now we can finally get into the summer months and hopefully get some of the sweet baby nonsense out of the way, right? One can only hope. But in the meantime, Alex, if people want to reach out to you and ask your opinions on the stories we covered today, as well as maybe some stories that we didn't cover, how do they get a hold of you?
Channel Blizzard 3000, it's my channel, and eventually I'll make something, anything. So,
well, you're in the middle of making something. It's not something we're talking about right now.
That's gonna take time, long time though. Yes. But and of course I'm also on Discord, so you can always reach out to me there. I'm always willing to talk to people. But
or he's on Steam playing City Skylines. All the time.
I was playing City Skylines all the time, indeed. Just because we also had to mention Disney in the movies. I'm looking forward to Alien this August, so yay! Hope it's good. It looks good.
Oh, is there a new Alien movie? Oh no, is that the series?
No, it's a movie.
Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry. I know what you're talking about. It's the next Alien sequel.
Yeah,
I can't remember. I can't remember. Is it a sequel to the new Alien movies or the old ones?
I'm not really sure where it's fitting in the continuity. I assume it's more going back to the old franchise. So my kind of assumption, just based on the trailer alone, it might be a bit of a soft reboot. Maybe. But don't quote me on that. I don't know for sure. But either way, I saw the trailer. I thought it looks good. Looks pretty intense. Looks like it might be nice, kind of hallmark back to the old Ridley Scott film, the original '79 film. So I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully by then I'll be off my.
They were gonna go more down the horror path.
Yeah, so probably much more like the '79 film, which is good by me. So and hopefully I'll be off my damn cane by then, because in fact, I also should say, FanX is coming in September. I'm also planning to go to FanX just on Saturday. I'm not going to go the whole weekend, but that should be fun.
No, that should be fun. The whole weekend on that. All right, and then if people want to reach out to me, obviously you're on the channel, so you guys can check out some of the other projects that I have going on. Which, for example, me and Rising Sun got together and did some more MMO talk, because people love that so much. And I think the only reason they love it is because of the weird stories that Rising Sun comes up with, and now I have to find an animator to animate them, Alex. I literally have 3 files in my PC called Rising Sun's Bizarre Adventure Part 1, 2, and 3, because of the weird stories that he just comes up with. So there you go. And then you can check out some of the other things that we have done in the past, including me and Andrea's review of Beyblade Season 1, which is going on right now. Or, since you brought up Alien, you guys can check out the previous Alien films that we have reviewed, which are the first and the second one. So you guys can look forward to that. And you can also reach out to me on Twitter at GeekyGNRO. I am back. I decided I was not going to partake in the wonders of Pride Month, and I decided to take a 30-day break from Twitter for that particular month. So I'm back, and it's not any much better, but we'll see what happens. So you guys can reach out to me there. And if you guys want to be able to submit a story yourself or be able to give us feedback, you can do so at geekyweek@gmail.com. And also be able to support us on podcasting platforms like Amazon, Google, or Apple Podcasts, Player.fm, as well as Spotify. So that's going to go ahead and do it for us. When we come back, it's going to be putting May in the books for 2024. And we will see you guys next time for the next Geek News reviews and opinions. So for myself and for Alex, we will see you guys next time. Maybe next time with another frickin' panelist if he's done with his frickin' skull.
Good luck, Brenton.